Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. Welcome to This Week in North America. We have two great guests on that I'm sure you're going to really be pleased to hear what they have to say about what's going on in Canada and here in the United States of America. Ken Drysdale, he's going to be with us at the second part of tonight's broadcast. He's from Canada, and he's got some real good news for everyone. And I specifically say some real good news because it is. And when he comes on, you'll be able to hear what he has to say. Also, at the top of the hour, I'm going to have Robin Byro on. Robin will explain to you who he is and what he's been up to. But the amazing thing that people said to me is that, wow, you're going to have a Democrat political strategist on your broadcast? Yes, I am. Robin is a close friend of mine. We did a lot together on much of the national news media here in the United States. And we disagree on a lot of issues. We agree to disagree, but the public here in America have dubbed us the Ronald Reagan and the Tip O'Neill. So I'm really happy that he's on with us tonight. But I do want to, before I bring Robin on, folks, I want to share with you that we need in the United States of America to lower the temperature. We need to lower the temperature. We need to take a road of a more respectful path when we're speaking politics. I can tell you as a Republican, what bothers me is that anyone who disagrees with certain segments of the party, they're called rhinos, which is Republican in name only, traitors, on and on and on and on, which tells me this, and I might get a number of Republicans upset tonight, but that's okay, because I believe in truth and transparency. It serves no purpose to call people names. If we are truly the party that stands on the Constitution of the United States of America, then we should be able to respect people who disagree with us. Isn't it all about dissent? Isn't it all about speaking about issues from various different angles and respecting those people? So I critique my own party as one that is in dire need of a complete cleansing out. And I'm talking about respect and dignity and honor. Now, I'll leave the Democrat Party critique to Robin. I'm sure he'll have a few words to say. And in fact, I'm going to bring him on board right now. Robin, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
It's good to be back with you, Lieutenant Steve.
Oh, it certainly is. It's been a long time, and I really am honored to have you on the broadcast. Robin, could you first tell us about yourself, a little bit about your background and what you've been doing in politics?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm an adoptive parent of two. They're awesome, and they may walk into the set any second. I told them to stay away, but if they happen to walk in my shot, you know what's up. But before that, I was a Southeast Regional Direct campaign in 2008. The only thing that could match the adrenaline of that campaign was jumping out of airplanes in the Army as Army Ranger. So I did happen, just freak occurrence, to be the first openly gay U.S. Army Ranger. And then I got back into politics when I retired from the military after 10 years. And that's where we're at today.
Well, and you ran for office, right? As a Democrat?
I did.
Mayoral office?
I did. I ran for mayor of Tucker, Georgia, which is where I live, a suburb enclave just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I got about 48.5% of the vote, so just close enough to sting.
Terrific. Well, the state of politics today, you heard me in my opening about my own party. I'm concerned about the name calling, the rhetoric that is giving young people in this country the impression that they could say anything about anyone, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and not care about the damage that they're doing, not only to our party, but even their own character. Could you weigh in on that, especially with regard to your party?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that happens to me. I'm a Democrat who goes on conservative media all day, every day, to try and give a common sense approach to what's happening in the Democratic Party, because my friends on the right don't understand what in the world is going on with the Democrats. So I try to break it down in a way that makes sense. But I get called a dino for that. I get all sorts of grief for going on conservative media. But we have got to reach across and start to see each other as neighbors, as Americans. We might have different ideas what we think is best for the country, but we all love our country. I wouldn't have served for 10 years. I wouldn't have deployed to Afghanistan twice if I didn't love my country. I might have a few nuanced differences about how I think things should be run, but we can talk through those. And that, Steve, is what I love about my dialogue with you and miss, is that we used to have conversations that got right to the common sense of the matter.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those issues that we may disagree on, and then try to share with people how we can come to a consensus, whereas we could cross the aisle, if you will, and say, look, maybe we could come to a consensus on this issue. So let's talk about the gun control issue, the Second Amendment in the United States. I am one who believes that people have the right to bear arms, that I'm certainly in favor of reasonable background checks, etc. I'm concerned that there's this idea that a lot of these shootings are being occurred as a result of the proliferation of guns, when we find out that most of the shootings, an overwhelming number of shootings, are being committed by career criminals who were released from prison. And so we're saying, hey, look, it's not the guns, it's the criminals. And the Democrats are saying, no, it's the guns. Would you weigh in on that?
Yeah, and my party, bless their hearts, they get it wrong on a shooting. They go after the guns, and we fumble over. The Democrats are notorious for fumbling over all of the talking points. I try to educate. Where I think we can meet in the middle is on background checks. And look, one thing that I proposed as a common sense reform that I don't think will ever happen, but makes sense, is that there's no background check from person-to-person sales of firearms. But I'll tell you, I think it makes sense to have those conducted at a police station, where they can look to make sure that the firearm wasn't part of a crime, and that the person who's getting that can legally do so. There's other ways to do this, but the guns themselves, that's not the problem. And every time my party goes and talks about gun reform, that's where we go, and then they bungle it and start saying that it's automatic weapons and assault rifles, and they just get everything wrong, Steve.
Yeah. Well, it looks like here we go, folks. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and we're agreeing on this issue. And maybe if some of our leaders would sit down and talk like we're talking about these issues, it'd certainly be helpful. Let's talk about the tragic, outrageous shooting. I'm sorry, not shooting, but beating of a young man in Memphis, Tennessee. I weighed in on that quickly. I was on a lot of the media. I don't know if you were, but the police actions were outrageous. I believe that the investigation that is ensuing, Robin, should include every supervisory level officer, including the police chief. My thoughts on this is, how does nobody know in the department that these were rogue cops? How is it that there weren't rumors going around that they were beating other people and abusing them and the brutality? But my question to you is this, and here's what bothered me about it. On the Democrat side, many Democrat leaders immediately came out and said this is racism. Now you got black cops who committed a black crime on a black person, and yet the Democrats came out and immediately, including Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, she should be thrown off the air, who claimed that maybe if we beat some white people, we'll learn our lesson. She said that. Now, looking at you and know you as a Democrat, I know it bothers you to hear that as the stupid things that my party representatives say. But would you weigh in on that? Maybe give people a little idea of what real balanced, level-headed Democrats are thinking about on this issue.
The phrase that I heard was blue on black crime. I get a little nervous when I hear black on crime, when I hear this referred to as black on black crime. These were police officers. They were in the duty of their uniform and doing their job. This is blue on black crime, in my humble opinion. But what they did absolutely was egregious. The things that the audio that we heard from some of the officers who were relieved of duty after the fact, I think that's the seventh one. Oh man, that hurt my soul. And look, I love law enforcement. My very best friend in the whole world is a police officer. I've got the back of law enforcement, but man, there's some bad cops out there, and they give ones a bad rap. And I'm glad to see that these are being held to account. But what happened hurts my soul. And the video, it was difficult to watch. I don't want my children ever seeing that. But the answer is I'm looking to professionals like you. That's why I'm talking to my best friend to say, what can be done? Is this a sensitivity training issue? We already have body cams. There was cameras above on the light pole looking down at the scene. I don't know how they thought they could get away with this. The video was going to come out.
I was asked that question on Fox. What do we do? How do we prevent these things? And as you know, I was a police officer for 38 years. Detective, lieutenant,
Yes.
supervised a number of police officers. And I answered in this manner, and I'd like you to respond to this, that all of what we see today happening, not only on police forces, but in society, begins in elementary school. It begins right there, where children should be taught about respect. They should be taught to understand that there are authorities that you'll be held accountable for. If you commit crimes, that you will be held accountable for that. I believe that our educational system has gone far, far astray. We hear about the woke agenda that's being advanced by some individuals, and they're more interested in teaching our children about sex and all kinds of different things when they should be speaking them more about civics and history, our Constitution. So that's part of it. With regard to the police service, I got to tell you, when I began to see police departments nationwide lower the standards, I'm talking about educational standards, physical standards, I was shocked, because when I came on, some departments, you had to have a college education, maybe military background, but you had to have some experience in life. I understand these 5 individuals, they were not well educated. One of them, from what I'm told, and it's something that I looked into, and it was reported that he was a correction officer and brought up on charges of beating an inmate. And yet this police department hired him. And then with regard to the police chief, there were allegations that were reported that she had some difficulties in other police departments, either suspended a few times or fired. My point is this. Robin, whether you're Republican or Democrat, when do we hold those elected to office accountable? Not only the people like these cops on the street and the police chiefs, but when do we hold those elected to office accountable?
Immediately, and at the ballot box this time and every time, Steve. This is a failure. And look, I've got an elementary age kid. I think it's a great idea to start discussing this in elementary school. Bring more police officers in to meet with the children. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned it. I need to have a talk with my own children now about understanding what happens if they get asked by a police officer, that they need to answer the questions clearly, concisely, comply. Don't freak out. That's the worst thing to do. But respectfully answer the questions, comply with law enforcement. We need to be teaching that in elementary school, middle school, and high school. Maybe then these people freak out if they're pulled over by police officers, because in my opinion, that's what happens this time and every time.
Robin, we had years ago, and I started it here in New Jersey, or in Nutley, New Jersey, is Adopt a Cop. We had children go in and meet officers, and officers would adopt them. I remember there was a young African-American child in our school district. He didn't have a father and had a lot of problems, but I went into the school with a number of officers, and we adopted this kid. And we told him, you come by police headquarters every time you get a report card, and I want to see how you're doing. He showed up. I love it. And we had lunch with the kids, and they learned to respect us and look at us as friends, not as enemies. So it's something, you know what, maybe you want to take your kids down to your local police department and kind of meet one of them cops. But I like what you said. Isn't it a shame that the parents have to step in and talk to these issues to their children, telling them, look, the guy and the gal in blue are not enemies. I mean, this should be taught in our school districts. They're here to help you. Right. Yeah, it should be. Well, okay. So that was a good run. We seem to be agreeing too much. I don't know what's going on here. You switching over?
It happens.
All right. So let's talk about this one. Climate change. Okay. The green energy programs. Now in New Jersey, we have whales. I mean, a lot of whales have been killed as a result of the windmills. And Representative Van Drew is now looking to put a moratorium on these windmills. We got electrical cars blowing up, electrical buses blowing up. We've got I said the wind power. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot going on regarding climate change and green energy. It doesn't seem to be working very well, causing a lot of heartaches for people. But here's my question to you. What about China? What about Europe? What about all these countries? So our people are going to be having their gas stoves taken away, gas shut down, coal's gone, oil's gone. We're going to have nothing left to move around, and we're going to have clean air. What about the other countries?
We lead the world, though. At the end of the day, we still lead the world. We set the example. Look, I'm all about clean energy, but we have to look at the entire picture. And it's not just, the answer isn't just more electric vehicles, because the batteries corrode. There's not any good program for dealing with the disposal of electric car batteries. They seem to create more problems for the environment long-term than just internal combustion engines. So, we've got to work together across party aisles to actually have some better resolutions. Look, you may not know this, but there have been 35 Teslas that have basically caught on fire. And did you know that Ford Pinto, there were only 28 of those that caught on fire? But look at the reputation that it did to the Ford Pinto brand. Tesla, we've had 35 catch on fire now, and no one's saying anything. So there are significant problems that are imperiling the lives of Americans, and we've got to address that. We've got to start working, not just battling one another in Congress. That's why Congress has a 22% approval rating as of January 2023, because we're not working together to get a damn thing done, pardon my French.
Yeah, Robin, you bring up a good point. Look, we have to take over the narrative, meaning we as Democrats and Republicans, because the narrative is in the hands of extremists on both sides. I mean, they go out there and they start making a lot of noise, and the world is ending, everything's going to collapse. When years ago, we didn't have that because we didn't have the internet, of course, but there seemed to be a lot of more honor and dignity between parties, where the Democrats didn't look as Republicans as an enemy, and the Republicans didn't look at Democrats as an enemy. You think we can get there at one point in time?
It's going to require us listening to one another. And that's what's wrong with politics today, is that we don't do that. We immediately, when the other person starts talking, we tune them out. We're not listening. We're not doing active listening. I make a point to actually listen to what my friends across the aisle are saying. I may not agree with 85% of it, but they bring up some points that I really do need to consider, like that point I just made about the disposal of electric car batteries. A known problem. That is one that we as Democrats have to acknowledge, have to address, and make plans for. It's not just as simple as all vehicles need to be converted to electric car batteries. What do you do with those when they go bad?
I'm one to believe that the one in charge of our climate is God. It seems like we try to take this, and I mean this, that we're trying to take the sovereignty of God in every aspect of our life, whether it be birth, death, climate, and all that. And so I've asked some Democrats, I'm not going to ask you, all right, but I'm just going to say I've asked some Democrats and Republicans, by the way, who like climate change. When the big flood came and Noah was floating around, I'd like to know how many factories were there, what caused the flood, and there's, of course, there's looking like a deer in the headlights. So, but I'll agree with you on the point. Yeah, we got to find the solution to these problems we're having. I think a lot has been done to clean our oceans, to clean our waterways. And I found the best way to do that is like what we did years ago. We got Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and some of the projects with JCs and Kiwanis clubs. We went up and down them riverbanks and cleaned them out. And it didn't cost taxpayers anything. I'm going to ask you to look at something for a minute, all right? I'm going to roll a little video, and then we'll be right back. Just watch this.
President Reagan believed in working together, bipartisanship, and everyone getting along, starting in the 1960s while he was campaigning to be California's governor, and through the rest of his political career. Ronald Reagan often cited the 11th not speak ill of another Republican, a sentiment he credited to Gaylord Parkinson, the state chairman of California Republicans during the 1960s. During remarks at a reception for a New York State Republican convention in 1982, President Reagan said,
"The greatest thing that's happened for the Republican Party is when the chips are down and the decisions are made as to who the candidates will be, then the 11th commandment prevails and everybody goes to work, and that is, thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican."
Thank you for joining us for this week's Throwback.
So there we go, Robin, right? The 11th commandment. And I guess that would go with Democrats too. Thou shalt not speak evil of another Democrat, but I'd like to extend it. Maybe thou shalt not speak evil of another American.
I like that. I think, and it's fair to criticize our own party. I try to give constructive criticism of the Democratic Party, just as I try to give constructive criticism of the Republican Party. But we have to start seeing each other as neighbors and see where we can find commonality, have the discussions, not just, it's turned into a gotcha culture. Everybody's want to get that little gotcha in. But we've got to start figuring out some way. We teach our children to love neighbors like we love ourselves. Why can't we do that?
Robin, one more issue, and it's troubling a lot of people across the country. I know it's probably troubling you. You're an Army Ranger. I'm a Navy commander. There's a worry that we're getting too deep into Ukraine-Russia war, that it's going to become another Vietnam. I've been very outspoken. Look, no one wants to see indiscriminate bombing of civilian structures, etc. But Vietnam, it started with money, then weapons, then advisors, then more money, weapons, advisors, and then ground troops. And we see Biden expanding this war. Now they're sending Abrams tanks over. And I understand now they found out that there's more equipment than the Biden administration has admitted to. And so it seems like the war is widening. And I'm concerned that we're going to be dragged into a Vietnam war. And I'd like to hear your perspective as a Democrat about this.
As a Democrat who fought in a few tours, we were there for 20 years. Let's not have another Afghanistan, another war on terror. That's where I think that the greater problem is that I don't see an end to this. And I don't think that Vladimir Putin does either. It's a real concern. I'm all for sending maybe disused equipment that our men and women in uniform aren't using. Sure, send it over. But there's going to be some common sense to this as well. And I'm not really seeing it. I have concerns as well. I don't want one of our men and women in uniform to have boots on the ground there. I'll say that. I'm all for sending disused equipment and maybe surplus equipment, but that's the only thing that I think is the best, most common sense approach to this, Lieutenant Steve.
One of the worries I have is that Biden had offered some missiles, long-range missiles to Ukraine, which could hit Moscow, St. Petersburg. And of course, and of course we say, well, it's not going to happen. We'll have monitors there, but we know things happen. And then when there was the issue of possibly coming to the table, Zelensky said, well, we want Crimea back as part of that negotiation. We know that's not going to happen. Putin's not going to surrender the entire Crimea back. But to your point, all we've been hearing about is, well, nuclear weapons, on and on and on. And no one's talking about lowering the temperature and sitting at a table and discussing this, whether we're Republicans or Democrats. I'm just wondering, where have our leaders gone? I mean, what courage and guts are going to say, look, we're going to sit down. Reagan did it. I know Tip O'Neill did it with Reagan with regard to getting the Democrats in Congress behind him. If those guys did it, why can't these guys do it?
They've got to do it. And look, I raised eyebrows when then President Trump brought in members of the Taliban and met with him at Camp David. And I still question that. But he tried. I think that was an attempt in earnest to try and negotiate with them. If he can do it, I think we ought to be able to do something here. And I definitely don't want to poke the bear of Russia here and give them any long-range missiles that can make their way to Russia. That could be catastrophic. I mean, you just want to talk about World War III. That's how we started World War III. So we've got to be careful with how we address this. There are huge human rights violations. I know that they are violating the law of war. They are committing war crimes Russia is committing war crimes against Ukraine. So they've got to be held to account. I just don't know exactly what the answer is, but it should be leadership. And that's what I'm not seeing right now, is really good leadership on this.
And the flip side of that, Zelensky and the Ukrainian military, I believe, also should be held accountable for war crimes.
Yes.
I've done a lot of research on it. I was shocked to read about the presence of Nazis in Ukraine. I mean, really bad. Zelensky also, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't know it until about a week ago. He shut down every church, every house of worship. They're not allowed to worship in that country. And my point is, we're sending all this money, all this military equipment, talking about, well, we want to keep it a democracy, and we got a guy that's shutting down churches of worship, controlling the airwaves, came to this country and pretty much demanded at the UN and then in Congress some more money. But I'll tell you what disturbed me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but what bothered me is that when the Ukrainian flag was unfurled in the halls of Congress, and they put that flag up when he was there. That's the United States Congress. That's a sacred building. To put a foreign nation's flag, whether we're pro or con, it was disturbing to me, and I know a lot of people, and some it wasn't, but I kind of was bothered over that. Yours?
Honestly, I'll be honest with you, that didn't bother me as bad because they had all signed it there in Congress. We're just presenting the flag. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe they flew that flag over the Capitol. No. That's where I would draw the line. Okay, so I don't have so much of an issue with that, but I'm glad that Zelensky came there, gave this speech. But how much money can we keep giving them? This could be endless. That's where I'm like, we're talking about raising the debt ceiling right now, but I can't justify giving them a blank check. And I appreciate his passion and showing up and speaking out the way he did. It was great. But that there cannot.
I wish he would have had a shirt and tie on. I mean,
yeah, I'm with you there. I put one on for your show. He can.
I know you did. One more thing before we wrap it up, because I have my Canadian guest coming on. A lot of trouble in Canada. There's Trudeau has really cozied up with President Xi of China. We've been on this for about a year. Tucker Carlson had some of the Canadian pastors who have been arrested and jailed. I do have videos where police went into a church service. Picture this, where Pastor Arthur is his name, was given a sermon, and the cops went into that church and tried to execute an arrest warrant and drag him out. Now they've got a bill in their parliament. This is all fact, by the way, Robin, to pretty much monitor all of the communications going in Canada and out of Canada. We have thousands of Canadians watching tonight, and I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on those issues, but I'd like you to share with them that free people, if you will, because I know you believe in this, that free people who believe in freedom and liberty, it comes out okay if they work within the framework of the law. And this is very important. If they work within the framework of the law, in our country, we need to work within the Constitution. In Canada, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and they've done a superb job. But can you give them a little bit of, if not a little bit, a lot of encouragement? You've been on the front battle lines, Democrat, Republican, or whatever, but at the end of the day, we're Americans. At the end of the day, they're Canadians, but they're having a serious, serious problem with their government.
They are, and we're noticing that here. We've been noticing that for years. And I'll tell you, just anecdotally, the lady who used to do my makeup at Fox News is probably the most lefty person I've ever seen. But when those Canadian truckers had that protest, she paid attention and she related with that and talked to me and said that really awakened her to what's happening there in Canada. The rest of us are starting to pay attention as well. And we know that things aren't really up to something's not right there with our Canadian brothers and sisters up north. So we are paying attention. Just make sure that your rights are protected and speak out. Use your free speech. You have free speech right now. Keep using it. Make sure that we listen. Tell us what's going on. Communicate with us. Let us know what's happening.
All right, so now I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and then we'll wrap it up. You're a very honorable Democrat, really good for this country. So I'm going to ask you if you and I could, at some point, just have a meeting, all right, a private meeting, and I want to share with you what we have with regard to the issues of freedom and liberty in Canada as it affects the United States. We believe, after looking at a lot of this, and I've had a lot of people look at this, that our national security could be affected by what's going on there, not only their freedom and liberty. So if we do this, just me and you sit down, you as a Democrat, me as Republican, and maybe we could come together, you and I, and propose to our legislators, look, you need to know this.
I love it.
Let's work on pulling something together, because right now we have a project called Project Maple Leaf. We're wrapping it up. We're going to get it to all of the Republicans, if we could, in Congress or the Senate. But I wasn't going to send it to the Democrats because I didn't feel that they'd be concerned. But I forgot about you. I forgot about you as a Democrat, and there are probably many more like you. So can we do that? Can we do that in a week or so?
You name the place, I'll be there. Flights out of Atlanta are really cheap. I'll be happy to meet with you in person.
Oh, great. We'll work that out. If not, we'll do it on Zoom, and then we'll have you back on. Robin, it's an honor. Always been a pleasure. And thanks so much, and God bless you and your family. And we're going to have you on again, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, my friend. My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. Folks, what do you think of that? What do you think of, and people have said this over and over again, gee, we'd like to see a Democrat come on your broadcast. Well, there you go. All right. And now, not only a Democrat who's come on the broadcast, but who has said, you know what, we'll sit down, let's talk about what's going on in Canada. That's exactly what we need. We need to come together as Democrats and Republicans in this country, fight for our country and for our friends north of us. That is terrific. All right, now we got some breaking news, and we have on the air right now. Hold on, Ken, because I'm going to set up our communication system here. Ken and I come up with an idea where he's going to be able to talk clearly. All right, Ken, so we're ringing in. That's Ken's phone ringing, folks.
There you go. I've got you.
Ah, perfect. Okay, loud and clear. Ken, I know you have some breaking news. One point I'd like to bring up that I'd ask you to weigh in on before we go on with some of the news you want to talk about. I get hundreds, literally hundreds of emails and messages a day. Most of them, probably most of them at this point, from Canada. What I'm concerned about is many people are saying, well, we're losing. There's no sense in fighting. The government's too powerful. And my concern is this, that's feeding into the government's propaganda. The Chinese Communist Party is great at that. And I've shared with Americans, look, don't go posting that stuff. The opposition is looking at this, and it's giving them a sense of strength. But, this is why I want to have you on the air tonight. I've had Alan Nicholson on. Alan's a great guy. I mean, he, his wife, got a group of people working on the Hague Inquiry, and what encouragement that has brought to not only Canadians, but Americans and people around the world. So can you weigh in on that, and then talk to us about what you're doing with the National Citizens Inquiry? But first, for the sake of our American audience, could you give us a little idea who you are?
Yes, I'm Canadian. I live in central part of Canada. By the way, Steve, I figured out why our communications are working. It's 39 below zero outside here right now.
Well, okay.
I think those little electrons are freezing.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm a professional engineer, and about 6 months ago, I decided to take a look at the statistics that the government of Canada was reporting as it related to the pandemic. So the first thing I did was I looked at mortality rates, and it was simply looking at the mortality rates as reported by the government. And what I found out was just incredible. When they were telling you that people 70 years of age and older were almost a death sentence if they got COVID-19, I looked at the mortality rates for 70-year-olds or older than 70-year-olds, and found out that before the pandemic, you had a chance of dying in Canada 1 in 32 if you were 70 years of age and older in any given year. In 2020, your odds of dying from COVID-19 was 1 in 324. So you had a 10 times higher chance of dying from any other reason other than COVID. Now, the numbers just got crazy from there. If you were 19 years of age and younger, your chance of dying from COVID was 1 in 4 million. And your chance of dying for any cause was about 1 in 1,700, something like that. So we looked at those kind of statistics. We looked at testing, what kind of testing did the manufacturers do? And we looked at a number of other things, and we wrote and then it went to all the members of the government, and then the population got a hold of it, and it's been downloaded and copied about 500,000 times now. And by the way, it's been distributed all throughout the United States, actually all throughout the world. The only continent it hasn't gone on is Antarctica.
So what is the National Citizens Inquiry? What are you doing with that?
It's the first of its kind in the world. What happened is that citizens have gotten together across the country, and they've pulled together an independent group that's going to travel across the country and hold hearings. So they're holding 3-day duration hearings in various locations from coast to coast in Canada starting in mid-March. They'll be televised. There'll be witnesses. We're calling witnesses from all manner of locations, from geography, from around the world, the United States. Experts will be coming up. We're inviting the government to provide witnesses. There'll be cross-examination. And there's 5 independent commissioners that will be hearing the information. And they will be writing a report in the end.
Now,
the intent?
I'm sorry, Ken, because I get some questions. Who are we? In other words, who are the people that are going to be doing the cross-examinations and the testimonies, etc.?
The testimonies are by people who volunteered through our website. And we've also approached various experts like Peter McCullough. I think we're talking to Dr. Peterson. And so we'll be having both expert testimony and testimony from citizens. And citizens have had the opportunity for about a year now to go online and sign up, explain to us what they'd like to testify about, and they're in a screening process right now.
This is fascinating, and you have just about every province is going to be involved in this?
Yes, they haven't announced all the locations yet, but the first hearing starts in Truro, Nova Scotia on March 16th to 18th. Then the next week we're going to Montreal for 3 days, Toronto for 3 days, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, and then it hasn't been confirmed exactly which cities further west, but it'll go all the way to the West Coast.
And so you have every province. It seems to me also, we had a discussion earlier in the week, you and I, that there's going to be some involvement regarding the people running for office, that they're going to be citizen groups. Is that the big announcement?
Well, that's another announcement. That's separate.
Okay.
Because like you, I get hundreds of emails, and people are saying, what can I do? What can I do? And what I was saying 6 months ago, and I'm still saying now, is get a copy of our report and send it out to people. But there's another initiative coming now. And it's really grassroots re-engagement of the people in the government. And so what we're doing is we're arranging, there's a group in Canada that's starting to arrange citizen representative groups in every electoral district. And the idea behind that is if you can have 10,000 or so people in each electoral district, and you demand something from your representative, they either do it or they're out in the next election. And it's non-party related. So it's not liberal or conservative or Republican and Democrat. It's just citizens coming together and exercising their democratic rights.
Well, I'll tell you, it's great because it worked here. This past election, we did exactly that from a local level, municipal government level, all the way up to the federal government, and cleaned out liberals from school boards all the way up to the U.S. Congress. And it seems to me that you're really on the right track, and you got this pretty well organized.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I said you're on the right track, and as I shared a few seconds ago, we did that here in America, and we were able to conquer the beast, if you will, from local school board elections all the way up to the White House. Well, the White House will be in another couple of years. My question to you is, you have this all organized or in the process of doing that in every province?
Yeah, that's being organized right now, and there's going to be an official announcement probably in the next several weeks.
This is quite an undertaking, and I guess, do you need a lot of volunteers and people to step up? And I say that because it seems like you're going to have a lot of volunteers, because people are asking, what can I do to help? Well, here you go, folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been interesting so far. There's such a hunger that people are knocking on our door saying, how can I participate? And we're not just quite ready yet, although we have organized in most provinces across the country.
So, Ken, I want to, this is a lot of great news, and this is good stuff, and I'm glad we're helping spread the news for you. How else are you spreading the news? Because I'm going to encourage people to help you by sharing this broadcast and getting to your website. So how else can they share the news?
Well, if you go to our website, and you can see it in next to my name there, you can download our report. You can download infographics. You can watch videos. We've actually created a series of 20-minute videos that go through this investigative report page by page. And there's 3 hosts, and it's believe it or not, it's quite entertaining. They try to keep it light, even though it's a very heavy subject, because people won't listen if you're just doing it in a very mundane way. So it's quite entertaining. There's 14 in that series, and there's more to come.
As I'm looking at the chats, and this is some of the people are coming on, and I see this a lot, which is good. Many of them saying, well, finally, there's hope. I think there's a lot of hope when people like yourself and others, would you share with your citizens, and certainly a lot of Americans and others are listening, about the hope factor? I mean, I see you winning, you the people in Canada winning. So I'm trying to get those who believe that there's no hope and that they're losing. In reality, you're winning.
Yeah. I always tell people we're at 1943 right now. The war has turned, but there's still a lot of work to do. I see not just local media getting in now, and I also see now national media starting to tell the truth in certain ways. There was the big news that came out of Thailand in the last few days, and I think that's going to be a significant effect. I talk to people. People are starting to wake up. We still haven't met critical mass yet. And so the whole process for me in getting out like this is to give information to people and have them read it and find out for themselves that the government isn't the only source of information.
You bring up a good point. Governments, whether it be the U.S. government or other governments, it's mainly propaganda, and we need to overcome that. Ken, did you hear the interview I had with the Democrat on the air?
I love that. I would have loved to have been involved in that.
Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to meet with them. I'm going to do that. And here, folks, as I explained, this is the pathway. I always say there's divine providence in all that we do. There's now a pathway to get the Democrats on board, not for an issue regarding America other than our national security, but what's happening in Canada. So there's more hope. And what you're doing is you're putting a lot of light on a lot of the issues that you want to bring up with regard to your government. Now, there's an issue. Are you going to be addressing a lot of issues, a whole range of them?
Oh yeah, from top to bottom, social, medical, psychological, economic. We have experts in all those areas that are coming to testify.
All right. So here's what's troubling about troubling the Americans. Bill C-11, I call it the electronic Berlin Wall, if you will. It's really troubling, and more people around the United States are beginning to learn about that. In fact, some of the major news media here have picked up on that. It seems to me that the government is leaning towards the ideology of Stalin and Lenin and Marx, where they want to regulate communications coming in and leaving Canada. And that's troubling to us. And that's where I say that this could be a clear threat to our national security, because if we can't get reliable information into Canada and Canada, the Canadian people out to us, they got a wall. They got an invisible wall put up.
One of the ways they're doing that is you can actually go online and you can go to the Parliament and you can read all the amendments to the act that they're talking about. The trouble is the original act is so huge that when you read an amendment, you've got to hold up the whole act and see what it means. But the bottom line here is what they're doing is they're taking the power away from the legislature and they're giving it over to a regulatory body, and they're decorating the statements up very nice way. They're saying that they can regulate broadcasters if they're not promoting equity, whatever that means. And they actually name certain groups, which it's really interesting. So when you just read it, just like everything else, you have to really understand what it's saying. It's like in the United States when they pass bills now. It's really quite interesting, where you call something the anti-inflation bill, but it's actually causing inflation.
Yeah.
We haven't caught on to that in Canada yet. We still have numbered bills.
Well, Trudeau and that Parliament are going to have a rude awakening from us if they pass that bill and it goes into effect. And that rude awakening is going to be, we will find a way to get news without the government interfering. Believe me, we're already working on that, many of us. I guess Trudeau doesn't understand that there was something called Voice for America back during the 1943 years. There was also Radio Free Europe. And if we have to help establish Radio Free Canada, we'll do that. That's how passionate we are here to helping our neighbors north. So these politicians, you know what, Ken? They come and they go. And I've said all along, they always lose. No matter what their agenda is, they're trying to take freedom and liberty away from people. They always lose. I have somebody who was talking about on this chat and earlier, the 15-minute city concept. Folks, it's going to fail. Believe me, it's going to fail. You'll hear the propaganda. Oh, it's great. It's going to get off the ground. It's going to fail. And Ken, I listened before. I don't know if you heard it. Climate change policies have failed. Green energy policies have failed. The electric cars, at least in America, they're blowing up every day. That's failed. We got windmills that are supposed to replace our oil and gas, and they find out now that the windmills are only doing one thing. They're killing whales off of the New Jersey coast. Many whales are now coming up. So, folks, if you think 15-minute cities are going to last 15 minutes, and believe me, because these politicians, they do things for the moment. Okay, this is popular. This is great. But Ken, I've said this, and maybe you could help affirm this. We, meaning we the people, who work within the framework of the Constitution of the United States and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in your country, we the people outnumber them by the millions. And all we have to do is stand up and speak out, get involved with organizations like yours and others in Canada, and bingo, we win, they lose.
You're absolutely right. The trouble is there's such a level of disengagement by the public right now. I've often said that there's citizens and there's residents. If you're not involved, if you're not going out and voting, if you're not making your opinion known at school board meetings, I'm sorry, you're a resident. You're not a citizen. You have a responsibility, and we've got to start converting those residents into citizens and getting them engaged.
We're on it's a war, folks. It's a battle for ideology. It's a battle for freedom and liberty. But here's how you could help us. Here's how you could help us. here in America. We're the only live stream broadcast in the United States of America that has a program that is very, very dedicated to the cause of the freedom people. Here's how you can help us. Please delete, and don't spread the propaganda that the Chinese Communist Party and that the government is sending out. And if people are getting into your Facebook pages or whatever, and they're saying, well, there is no hope, we're going to lose, this is what they said about this is what they said about that, don't dignify it. Just get rid of it. You've got programs up there in Canada like this. They're in your country. They're doing a great job. And I would say, look at the way you could support them is listen to what they're saying. Listen to what Ken's saying. Listen to what Alan Nicholson is saying. Listen to what credible, reliable people who the only skin they have in this game is freedom and liberty. The politicians, the skin they have in the game is their political survival. Ken?
Yeah, no, that's very true. And it's the same here as it is there. A lot of people don't realize how closely knit together Canadians and Americans are. You know, we're your biggest trading partner. I have sons and sisters and cousins who live in the United States and vice versa. So, you know, what happens in Canada happens in the United States. What happens in the United States happens in Canada. And, you know, I can't let this go. Sorry. I was listening to your previous guest because you were talking about gun control. Buckle up, folks. And, you know, I did a post on this, and you could go to our website and there's a news feed and you could read our post. But I wonder if people know what's going on in Canada with regard to gun control. We're a country of 39 million people. Do you know how many gun-related homicides we had last year? 276. And you know what? 43% of those were organized crime. So we had like 118 total homicides in Canada that weren't related to organized crime out of 39 million people. And now they're taking away our guns, our shotguns, our semi-automatic 22s, our hunting rifles. So if you guys think that their aim in gun control in the United States is trying to just go after assault weapons, no. That's how it started here. And, you know, I'll give you another little funny statistic. Again, these are government statistics, unaltered. As of May of 2022, there were more deaths reported by the vaccine in Canada than there were homicides with firearms in that same year. And it's like 339 deaths by vaccine, 276 deaths by firearms. But we're banning all firearms.
Well, they certainly tried it here, and they're losing on every level. Our courts now on state levels, there are upholding concealed carry. Florida, obviously, concealed carry. We got a few other states where people can now purchase firearms. I mean, the tide is turning here. And I say that for this reason. It's turning, Ken, because we did what you're about to do in Canada with the small electoral districts. Politicians will sell their mothers for a vote, believe me. It's their power. My wife uses this. She says, this is how much control they have, folks, right here. You see, between my thumb, this is how much control, little control, right? But you and we, the people, have the world. I mean, look what we have. They hate what we're doing, Ken. They despise what we're doing. They can't control this. They've tried. They've tried to shut us down. And some of those individuals in your parliament tried, all right? Or maybe people who work for them. They failed miserably because we live under the Constitution of the United States. You see, they don't understand that there's a border, you see? They probably don't understand there's a border because they're trying to put the wall up, thinking the wall's up. But the fact of the matter is they got a problem. And I've said this to your citizens as well as ours here, that the government is not a problem for us. We're a problem for them because we're on the right side of the law. They just count on sending all this negative stuff to us, morning, noon, and night, discourage us, put fear into our hearts. Fear paralyzes us. Remember when Franklin D. Roosevelt said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And so, so I say, change your fear to faith. We have a God above. I really believe strongly that, you know, where there is the Spirit of the Lord, there is freedom. And we represent that also, folks. Ken, I'll give you the last word.
really appreciate your help. Go to our website, download the report, have a read. If you agree with it or you agree with most of it, pass it along. Sign up to our website, subscribe. It's free. You can read the blog posts, but if you want to receive the blog posts automatically from us, sign up and you'll get them in your email. Again, it's free. We don't sell anything, no t-shirts, no subscriptions, nothing. So take a look. Let us know what you think.
And if you need to get in touch with Ken, could you give your email? If not, they can email us and we'll just forward it to you, whatever we want to do it.
It's right on our website. It's just contact@thetruefacts19.com.
Great. Ken, a pleasure. We'll have you on again. Well, I'm sure we'll have a great progress report. And thanks for that breaking news. I'm excited about that. That's pretty good.
I am too.
A lot of hope, Canadian friends, Romans, and countrymen. You got a lot of hope. Take care, Ken. God bless you. Thank you.
You too. God
Thank
bless.
you so much. Well, there you go. Another Canadian hero. Boy, your country's loaded with them, folks. I mean, really, you've got some great people in your country, as we have here in the United States, who are working very, very hard to advance the cause of freedom and liberty. And as I said earlier, folks, I really mean this because I get a heck of a lot of emails from Americans as well as Canadians who are very discouraged, downtrodden, and depressed over what they see and what they read. And most of that you're reading and seeing is designed to do that to you. But remember, please remember, we have a God above, right? We believe in God, don't we? So let us exercise the God-given gifts that he gave us. And one of them gifts are faith and trust in him. And believe me, I know it's hard sometimes, right? When you're walking through the valley, but you're walking through the valley of what? The shadow of death, not the valley of death, the shadow of death. And we have to fear no evil. So always keep that in mind. You've got a lot of hope and a lot going on between our countries. See, this way, there we go. See that? That's America and Canada. And I got to tell you, we've never had an alliance of people like this, never in the history of our two nations working together for a common cause to protect our freedom and liberty. What but divine guidance can cause that to happen? All right, folks, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. So we'll see you next Thursday on This Week in North America. Please email us, pray for us, pray that God sends people to meet our needs, your needs, and get involved, folks. Thank you. God bless you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.